Hey, this is Dave with Hacking Rideshare, and here's another hint and tip on being a better Uber, Lyft, and rideshare driver. One of the great ways that drivers can make a lot of money in a short amount of time is when, especially Uber, and also when Lyft puts primetime hours on, and then Uber does their surge pricing. That's when you can sometimes make 2, 3, sometimes up to 4 times as much for one trip as you would you make 4 times as much. So it's a great way to make really good money, especially during high traffic time, high demand time, and high peak time. But recognizing when surge happens, positioning yourself to be able to take advantage of when Uber or Lyft is on surge or is in prime time hours and pricing is kind of a tricky situation. Now, obviously, within the maps on both Uber and Lyft, you'll be able to see the heat map on Lyft. Those areas are in light pink and sometimes dark pink. Now, the light pink is obviously a lower, but it's 25 or maybe 50% higher. The darker pink can sometimes go upwards of 200 to 250%, maybe even 300% than the normal pricing. On surge, it's a little bit more specific. It'll go from 1.2 all the way up to, I heard that during New Year's Eve, that some surge pricing was upwards of 7, 8, 9 times the normal amount. So being able to position yourself and make sure that you're in an area where surge is happening is always a tricky situation. Now, the great thing is that if you're in an area and you notice that you're in surge, pull over, find a safe place to park, and just sit in the middle of a big fat surge area, and hopefully the requests will come. Sometimes you might be on the edge of it. I would suggest, obviously, driving, making your way towards the middle area that's going to be the darkest red or the darkest pink, and try to position yourself there, because even if you're pulled out of that centralized area, you're still going to probably be within that surge circle. But here's a question: is that how do you know when surge is going to start? That's the tricky part. Now, during the middle of the day, sometimes Uber will surge 2.5 times in a particular part of town that you wouldn't expect. Now, obviously, when the bars let out between 1:30 and 2 o'clock, when it's last call in an area of town where there's lots and lots of bars, obviously surge is going to hit because people are going to want safe rides home. So it's safe to position yourself for that. But how do you know where to be on a regular day? Maybe in the middle of the day if you have time to be able to drive. That's the tricky part. So my best suggestion is know your city, know where events are going on. For example, I drive in Orange County, and Disneyland is a destination resort for many people. The fireworks go off at about 9:30, and the park usually will close around 10 or 10:30, sometimes 11 o'clock, depending on the season, if it's winter or if it's summer. So typically when the fireworks go off, that indicates that Disneyland is about to close. So I'll position myself down by Disneyland at about 9:30 or 10 o'clock, because most families are wanting to go home after the fireworks go off. Everybody's tired, they're maybe sunburned, they're a little bit dehydrated, and they all want to go home, and they really don't care that if they're going to be paying for an extra distance or time for surge, so they'll just hit the button and say, go ahead and I'll pay the higher rate. So it's knowing your city and recognizing when surge builds typically. Also, just driving around the city and keeping the app open and knowing where surge typically happens. Now, this is going to take a few weeks to kind of figure it out, how your city will respond to surge, but it's always a good idea to kind of know what's going on around your city. And also, my best suggestion is if you see a surge area and you feel that you might be able to get to it within a 5-minute drive, go for it. But if it's about a 10 to 15-minute drive away, you're probably going to miss the surge, because typically a lot of drivers will have the same idea. They'll see a surge area and they'll move to that area, wanting to take advantage of the surge, trying to bring more drivers into the area to take advantage of it. And unfortunately, that's going to bring the surge down because one, you know, when demand is high, supply is low, that's when the surge happens. Well, when the supply meets that demand, the surge is going to go down. Or all of those people that did request on surge are going to get in cars and they're going to pay the higher price, but they're going to be gone, and then, you know, the surge has gone away. So if it's going to take you more than about 10 to 15 minutes to get to the surge area, it's probably not worth your time, because you're burning your own gas to get to a surge area that very well may not exist by the time you get there. Now, another small trick to do is, if you're close to a surge area and you see that it's building, turn your app off and drive there as quickly and safely as you can, because if you take yourself online, that's another car that isn't available, and it's all based on supply and demand. So if the demand is high and supply is low, supply is you, the driver, that's when the surge builds. So if you're trying to get to an area, go offline for the 5 minutes that's going to take to get you there, because one, you won't get to the edge of the surge, which is obviously going to be a lower rate. It's going to be a 1.2 or 1.3. You want to get to that middle of that surge where it's 2.0 or higher. So take yourself out, try to get to the middle, the highest of the surge area, and then flip your app back on, because that takes one car out of the availability of being able to meet the surge until you're in the middle of the surge. So those are my hints and tips on being able to take care of surge. So if you're too far away, don't waste your time. And also, last one, just because you are in a high surge area does not mean you will get a surge request. And that means Uber alerts the customer and says, demand is off the charts. Surge has gone up to 2.3, and this is what your per mile and this is your per minute rate on this particular surge. And it gives passengers the option to wait it out. And they usually say, you know, we estimate that the surge is going to go back to normal in about 10 to 15 minutes or whatever it is. And then they have the option to say, okay, please alert me via the app when surge has returned to normal. So that's good for Uber in the fact that they're trying to pace out the amount of passenger ride requests so that they don't get hit with a higher surge. And they're also trying to be able to have cars meet that demand. So by waiting, it kind of spaces out the demand to meet the supply. But also for us drivers, you could be sitting in a big fat surge, 2.5, 3 surge, but everybody that was hitting the app that was creating that demand very well may be selecting the option to wait it out. So you very well may be sitting in something and not getting any kind of a request while you're sitting in an area where there's a lot of people that are planning on waiting. So unfortunately, you're not going to get that surge until it goes down to a reasonable amount that they're willing to pay. It'll go back down to 1.5 or even lower than that, and that's just an example, obviously. So when it comes to surge, it's not a guarantee. Even if you're in the darkest pink on Lyft or darkest red on Lyft, even if you're sitting smack dab in the middle of it, you very well may not get it, because the price, you know, Uber has priced you out of the competition, and you're just going to have to wait it out, which is fine, because there's a lot of impatient people. Now, as my experience has been, especially late at nights, Fridays, Saturdays, Saturday nights, a lot of people had a few drinks and they just don't care, because they'll hit the button and then they'll worry about it tomorrow. Because they're just tired and they want to go home. So it's always a good time to be able to drive, to be able to take advantage of that serve, and you're also kind of doing a public service, and the fact that you're getting drinking and driving lower by preventing those drivers from getting on the road. So those are my best tips. If you're a driver yourself and you have some hints and tips on how to take advantage of surge, how to recognize surge, and what your experiences have been with surge and increased pricing, feel free to leave a comment down below. And also, if you like this video, hit like and subscribe. So we'll be doing more videos like this for both passengers and for drivers on hacking Uber and Lyft, hacking rideshare. Thanks for watching.